Texas is wide enough to swallow whole the things its people whisper about. Out past the refineries, beyond the quiet lakes and the long black highways, there are stories that never make the evening news. Stories carried in late-night phone calls, in the hush of search and rescue teams, in the way a sheriff pauses just a little too long before saying, "We are still investigating." Some nights, the wind drags something unfamiliar through the mesquite trees. Some mornings, the water gives back what it kept, but never the reasons why. In the cities, under bridges, and behind concrete, shadows move in patterns no one can quite explain. These are not campfire legends. They are events people witnessed, documented, and then tried their best to forget. But Texas remembers. It holds on to these moments the way it holds heat in the air, quiet, heavy, always close. And tonight it finally speaks. Lock your doors. Put on your headphones. Because after this video, after you hear what the water, the highways, and the sky have been doing, you will never see Texas the same way again. The story begins in the kind of heat that makes the city shimmer. Houston in the summer feels heavy, like the air is thick enough to hold secrets. Out in the bayous, it has been doing exactly that. Bayous are quiet by nature's slow brown water winding through neighborhoods, carrying fragments of storm drains, memory, and time. They slip past backyards and under bridges like the city's forgotten veins. By day, they look ordinary, almost dull. But in early 2025, they began carrying something else. One body was disturbing. Two was tragic. But by the time the 16th body surfaced, residents were no longer whispering. They were asking why, and why now. The official statements came quickly. No connection between the cases. No evidence of foul play. The police were confident. The medical examiner repeated the same line in every interview. Accidental drownings. Isolated incidents. Nothing to link them. But people who lived near Bray's Bayou and Buffalo Bayou did not believe that. Not when the pattern looked so deliberate. The bodies did not come from the same area. They were not the same age. They did not share backgrounds, jobs, or routines. Yet they kept appearing within weeks of each other, in waters that dozens of people walked past every single day. Some were found snagged on branches after a storm, their clothes torn but their faces strangely calm. Others drifted silently into view, discovered by joggers who had passed the same spot the morning before and sworn the water had been empty. None of them were carrying identification. Not a single wallet, not a phone, not a name. It was as if something had stripped all traces of who they were before releasing them back to the surface. A local kayaker described one detail that the news downplayed. They looked placed, he said. Not washed in, not carried by currents. Placed. When reporters asked for clarification, he refused to talk again. His friends say he stopped going out alone on the water after that. Fear spread in small circles, first late, night group chats, neighborhood forums, friends telling friends to stay away from the water at dusk. A rumor grew quietly beneath the city's tall glass skyline. Someone was using the bayou as a disposal route. The idea of a serial killer drifted through Houston like humidity too wild to say out loud, too plausible to ignore. The police insisted the drownings were unrelated, but one detail bothered everyone. Most of the victims were not reported missing. They simply appeared unclaimed, unsearched for. It was as if they had lived invisible lives, or had been made invisible afterward. Emergency responders talked off the record about how calm some of the scenes felt. No signs of a struggle. No chaos. Just bodies in still water, like they had been lowered instead of dropped. Even more unsettling were the recoveries that happened when the water level was too low to have carried anyone in from far away. A firefighter leaned close to a journalist once and whispered, "Things are not lining up." That quote never made it into the official article. Neighbors living near the waterways began to notice other things, the way animals went suddenly silent at night, The strange chemical smell that sometimes rose off the bayou before dawn, the sense that the water was watching back. They are convinced the city is hiding something bigger, something that does not fit neatly into the word crime. And the most chilling part, whatever is happening in Houston's bayous does not feel finished. The count has not stopped. The pattern, whatever it is, seems like it is only beginning to surface. If Houston's bayous are where the city gives back what it can't explain, then in Austin, that role belongs to Lady Bird Lake. From the shoreline, it looks calm, almost picturesque. A wide sheet of dark water resting between bridges and city lights, framed by joggers' paths, apartment towers, and the low hum of traffic. By day, it is crowded with kayaks and paddleboards, cyclists ringing their bells, families pushing strollers along the trail. But at night, the lake feels different. The breeze sinks low. The surface turns black, absorbing the glow of the city instead of reflecting it. The sounds of music and laughter from nearby bars fade into a distant murmur, and the silence coming off the water becomes heavy enough to press against your chest, like the lake is holding its breath. Since 2022, that silence has been broken again and again. More than 30 bodies have been pulled from Lady Bird Lake. Each discovery comes with details that feel too similar to ignore. Most were young men. Most vanished after leaving bars along Rainy Street, a strip known for its crowded patios, neon drinks, and music bleeding from doorway to doorway. Friends remember seeing them step outside for air, wander off to call a rideshare, or say, "I am heading back, I will text you," and then nothing. Hours later, sometimes by dawn, they are found in the water. The locations repeat certain stretches of shoreline, certain coves and inlets, where the trail curves just enough to hide what lies below. It is as if the lake is returning whatever stepped too close to its edge. Police insist the cases are not connected. They call them accidental drownings. People who walk too far, too tired, too intoxicated. Wrong place, wrong time. But residents along the shoreline do not buy it. Not when the stories repeat with eerie precision. Not when families describe sons and brothers who were experienced swimmers, careful drinkers, or who disappeared just minutes after calling for a ride home. One woman walking her dog near the trail at 6 a.m. described seeing something that still haunts her. The water was not moving, she said. Not a ripple. But he was just there, like he had been placed gently, not pulled in. When she called it in, the dispatcher asked her to repeat that line twice, as though the phrasing itself made everyone uncomfortable. A kayaker who discovered another body told reporters he noticed the same thing. No drag marks on the bank. No broken branches. No sign the victim had struggled against the water. Just stillness, as if the lake had been holding its breath and finally let go. The explanations came quickly: a possible serial killer, negligence by the city for not lighting the trails better, the steep, uneven drop-offs along the waterline where one wrong step could be fatal. Those theories felt logical, comforting even. At least they had names and shapes. Then came the stories that did not fit. Several festival goers reported hearing screams near the shore during South by Southwest, only to find empty, unbroken water. A pair of joggers swore they saw a man standing waist-deep in the lake at 3 a.m., staring straight up at the sky, perfectly still. When they blinked, he was gone. Security guards and towers overlooking the water mentioned seeing shadows move along the lake surface, with no corresponding figures on the trail. And every spring, just as temperatures rise and the crowds return, the pattern begins again, like a cycle the city refuses to acknowledge. One detail stands out more than the rest: timing. Many of the victims vanished shortly after last call, within the same narrow window of the night. Several phones showed abrupt, inexplicable battery drops moments before disconnection. One phone recorded a final snippet of audio, a faint splash, then what sounded like a single exhale, too close to the microphone to be natural. No one has been able to explain that. Investigators quietly admit that the lake's currents do not behave the way people think. Despite the still surface, the water beneath moves with unpredictable pockets and sudden pulls. Some divers say the lake feels heavy, like it does not want to release what falls into it. And every time another body surfaces, the same question echoes through Austin. Is this coincidence? Or is the lake keeping score? And if so, what has it decided to keep for itself? Out on Highway 290, just outside Houston, the night can feel almost empty. After 11 p.m., the road becomes a dark ribbon of asphalt stretching past fields, warehouses, and pockets of pine. Truckers who run that stretch know every billboard, every curve, every distant orange glow of refinery flame. They also know the sky, its usual traffic, its usual stars. That is why, when something new appeared above them, they noticed. It started with a single light, bright, steady, and silent, drifting over Highway 290 just after 11 at night. No blinking pattern like a plane. No navigation lights. Just one white point hanging a little too low, a little too still. In late 2024, drivers began reporting strange formations of drones moving in patterns that did not match anything commercially available. At first, people assumed it was hobbyists testing new equipment, a company doing a light show rehearsal, or maybe some kind of military exercise. Then the reports multiplied. 3 lights moving in a perfect triangle over the eastbound lanes. 5 lights tracing geometric shapes, rotating and folding like a slow, silent kaleidoscope. 1 formation made up of nearly a dozen glowing spheres drifting above the highway, as if they were surveying the traffic below, keeping pace with it. What bothered witnesses was not the lights themselves. It was the quiet. Even consumer drones have that mechanical whine, that high frequency, buzz you feel more than you hear. But these lights made nothing. They slid through the air with the smoothness of something that was not fighting wind, was not obeying gravity the way it should. One trucker described seeing a formation hover directly above his rig. They followed me, he said later. Matched my speed exactly. Did not drift, did not wobble. Like they were studying the truck. When he was pressed for more details, he admitted something else. The lights did not cast shadows. They glowed, but the ground beneath them stayed black. Reporters reached out to the FAA, who denied receiving any flight plans for drones in that area on those nights. The Air Force denied involvement. Local police shrugged the sightings off as misidentifications, maybe helicopters, maybe flares, maybe reflections, maybe nothing at all. But the videos told a different story. One clip, recorded by a driver near the junction with Beltway 8, shows 3 lights forming a perfect equilateral triangle. The points shift in unison, rotating without drifting apart. The triangle contracts, expands, then stops in midair as if locked into place. No visible propellers, no flicker, no obvious source. No swarm technology currently available to civilians is supposed to maintain that kind of rigid precision in open, windy air. Then came the incident at Bolivar Peninsula. Just before Christmas, a family staying near the coastline recorded a cluster of lights over the water. Not airplanes, not helicopters. 12 points of white light hovered just above the waves in a long horizontal bar. One light began to blink rapidly. Then, in perfect sequence, the others followed, like a signal passing from one end to the other. Moments later, the entire row moved sideways without changing orientation, sliding across the sky as if on an invisible track. Too smooth, too level, too synchronized. Local fishermen later said they would seen similar lights weeks before, but stayed quiet. You say you saw something out here, you get laughed at, one man said. But I know the difference between lights on a shrimp boat and something that is not supposed to be there. As sightings spread, another detail emerged: interference. Drivers reported their radios cutting out when the lights approached. One car's dashboard camera froze for exactly 3 seconds while a formation hovered overhead, then resumed like nothing had happened. A cyclist in Cyprus swore that her phone shut off completely even though the battery had been nearly full. Someone online mapped the sightings and realized many of the formations seemed to cross controlled airspace within miles of Bush Intercontinental Airport. If that was true, the lack of FAA logs was not just strange, it was impossible. But the most unsettling account came from a man working nights behind a distribution center off Highway 290. He stepped outside for a break and saw a single light hovering above the warehouse. It descended slowly to be falling, too steadily to be drifting. As it approached the roofline, he realized it was not a drone. There was no frame, no propellers, no mechanical parts. Just a perfect sphere of white light floating with the calmness of something that was not obeying any rules we recognize. He ran inside. By the time he returned with a coworker, the light was gone. Today, the official explanation has not changed. No drones, no aircraft, no records. But residents along 290 and out toward Bolivar still look up at night, scanning the sky for silent shapes that move in ways machines should not move. Because if the sky can move with intention, the real question is not what is up there now. It is how long it has been watching already. If the silent lights over Highway 290 made people question what was moving in the sky, the suburbs northeast of Houston made them question what was moving in the air itself. On a quiet night in Atascocita and Kingwood, the kind of night where the streets feel hollow and still, thousands of people heard something that did not belong there. It arrived just after 9 p.m. No storm, no fireworks, no warning. 1 second, Atascocita, Kingwood, Huffman, and nearby neighborhoods were wrapped in their usual suburban calm, ceiling fans humming, dogs shifting in their sleep, televisions murmuring in living rooms. The next second, the sky ripped open. The sound was described 100 different ways. Like a bomb going off. Like a semi-truck crashing into the side of the house. Like thunder, but too close, too sharp, and over too fast. Windows rattled in their frames. Walls shuddered. Some people felt it in their chest, first a deep pressure that rose into their ears and teeth, like the air itself had clenched. Others heard it as a clean, violent crack that seemed to come from everywhere at once, above, below, inside. Then it was gone. No echo. No rolling thunder. Just an abrupt silence that felt louder than the noise. Social media lit up in seconds. People from Atascocita, Kingwood, Huffman, even parts of Porter and Humble all posted the same thing. Did you hear that? A single massive boom, no visible source. Some thought a transformer had exploded. Others assumed a pipeline had ruptured. A few sprinted outside, expecting to see smoke boiling up on the horizon, the glow of a fire, sirens already screaming in the distance. There was nothing. No fire. No cloud. No plume. Residents called law enforcement and local dispatchers, asking the same question in a dozen different ways. What just blew up? But no one had an answer. The fire department had not received any major incident reports. No industrial facilities nearby reported accidents. The National Weather Service logged no lightning strikes in the area. One man checked every room in his house, then the attic, convinced something heavy had collapsed in the structure. Another walked his property line with a flashlight, expecting to find a crater or a fallen tree. A woman in Kingwood said every picture frame on one wall had shifted at the exact same angle, as if a precise shock wave had rolled through her house from a direction she could not name. Within hours, two versions of the story began to form. In the official version, authorities floated possibilities, maybe a sonic boom from a military aircraft, maybe a meteor fragment breaking apart high in the atmosphere, maybe some kind of subsurface activity, something big but distant, something already gone, no immediate danger, nothing to worry about. In the other version, the one traded in neighborhood chats and late-night conversations, the boom felt like a warning or a test. People kept coming back to the same details. Pets reacted before the noise hit, dogs pacing and whining, staring at the sky or at a single blank wall. A teenage boy described watching the water in his glass tremble on his desk seconds before the sound, as if the house itself had flinched early. A security camera from a nearby home caught something stranger. On the audio, a low-frequency rumble builds just before the main blast. At the moment of impact, the video feed warps for a single frame, pixels smearing sideways, the image bending as though reality had slipped, then snapped back into place. No visible flash. No tree line bending under a shockwave. Just a violent, source-less sound slamming through the speakers. Some residents said the boom felt directional, stronger on one side of the house than the other. Others swore it felt like it came from underneath, like something had struck the ground deep below their foundations. Up in the sky, one driver on the Sam Houston Tollway remembered seeing a thin, straight cloud line overhead just before the noise a pale scratch across the night, with no plane in sight. Experts suggested explanations: a distant industrial explosion, a jet breaking the sound barrier, a small meteor, underground work. Each sounded possible. None fit cleanly. If it was a plane, where was the radar track, the official notice? If it was a meteor, where was the light, the reported impact? If it was construction, why did so many miles of neighborhoods feel it at nearly the same intensity? As weeks turned into months, the event folded into local folklore, the Atascocita boom. A one-night shock that left no crater, no debris, no broken glass, only the shared memory of a sound that did not match anything people had heard before. Parents told their kids, "You should have heard it. You would have thought the world was ending." But beneath the nervous laughter, one question lingers. What kind of force can reach into a neighborhood, shake every wall, press against every chest, and then erase every trace of itself, if sound can arrive without a clear source? What happens when it finally decides to bring one with it? The old traffic tunnel beneath the Houston Ship Channel was never meant to be seen again. For decades, it sat sealed under concrete and water, a forgotten artery in the city's industrial body. People mentioned it sometimes as a curiosity, a relic from another era. But only locals who worked near the port knew the other version of the story. They said the tunnel felt wrong. They said sound behaved strangely down there, that vibrations lingered too long, that echoes came back in mismatched patterns. Some insisted that on quiet nights, you could hear cars driving through its engines, tires on concrete, the distant swish of passing vehicles, even though it had been closed for years. In early 2025, demolition crews were finally sent inside. Their job was simple on paper: document, dismantle, clear it out. The first day started like any other teardown. They carried headlamps, work lights, ventilators, and the kind of casual confidence that comes from handling dark places for a living. But the tunnel did not feel abandoned. The air inside was colder than it should have been, damp in a way that felt more like breath than moisture. Their voices echoed in uneven rhythms, bouncing back from angles that did not match the walls. Before they would finish setting up their lights, one worker pointed deeper into the darkness. A bright white glow hovered ahead. A sharp, circular light, like a single car's headlamp, aimed straight at them. The foreman radioed the crew stationed at the opposite entrance. They had not entered yet. No one else was inside. The team moved forward. The light did not grow larger. It simply slid backward, always the same distance away, like it was pacing them. Then, without dimming, it just went out. At that exact moment, several workers felt the temperature drop. Later, sensors would confirm it 10 degrees in an instant. Their report labeled it an optical anomaly. None of them believed that. The second incident happened during a structural survey. One worker wore a body camera to document the interior. At the midpoint of the tunnel, the timestamp glitched, jumping backward and forward several seconds. Their radios crackled with static. Then came the sound. Sharp, distinct, and unmistakable. High heels walking on concrete. Heel, heel, heel. The team swung their lights toward the noise. Nothing. No figure, no shadow. But the footsteps kept going, passing right beside them, moving ahead into the dark, fading with distance like an invisible person had just walked by. On the body cam audio, the sound is clear, crisp, rhythmic. No overlapping radio, no machine interference. Just someone or something that should not be there. The clip was sent up the chain. It was filed, labeled, and quietly dismissed. The final incident never made it into any report. One night, a security guard monitoring the exterior cameras saw light bloom inside the tunnel entrance. Two beams side by side, rising like a car was approaching from deep within. He watched, confused. There were no crews scheduled. No vehicles allowed. The headlights drew closer, brightening, reflecting off the damp concrete. When they reached the mouth of the tunnel, the beams flickered and dissolved into nothing. No car. No sound of an engine. No tires. The camera recorded an empty road. And yet, the guard swore he smelled exhaust drifting past his booth. When he tried to export the footage, the file corrupted instantly. Word spread quickly along the ship channel. Some workers said the tunnel was replaying its old traffic, memories pressed into concrete and forced back to the surface as demolition neared. Others insisted something older had taken up residence down there, and it did not want to lose its home. In the final weeks, lights inside the tunnel began failing in odd intervals, flickering in patterns that felt more like signals than malfunctions. Workers reported seeing the faint outline of a low angular car at the far end, not modern, more like something from the 1970s drifting silently through the haze and vanishing. No one volunteered to go in alone. Eventually, the tunnel was sealed, dismantled, erased from the map. Above it, ships slid through the water. Trucks rumbled over new routes. Concrete covered everything. But some nights, dock workers swear they see two pale headlights glowing beneath the black surface of the channel, moving slowly as if still searching for an exit that no longer exists. 6 stories. 6 places where the edges of reality feel thinner than they should. From the bayous to the highways, from the city lakes to the silent ruins of an old hospital, Texas carries its mysteries like heat in the air, quiet, heavy, always close. Some are recent. Some have been waiting for years. All of them leave marks on the places where they happen, and on the people who keep trying to forget. But mysteries do not disappear just because we look away. They wait. They settle into the ground, into the walls, into the water, until someone finally asks the question everyone else avoids. If you made it this far, thank you. Leave a like if one of these stories stayed with you. Tell us which place haunted you most and which we should explore next. And remember, some places are not forgotten. They are just waiting for you to notice them.